Hi, we're joined today by Janet Pickles. She's the CEO of RA Medical, who are celebrating a very special anniversary at the moment. They turn 30 years old this year. Janet formed the company with her husband Chris back in the early 90s. Janet, how are you doing this morning?
I'm very well, thank you, James. Thank you for inviting me.
It's our pleasure to have you. So, as I say, the company's just turned 30 years old. I was wondering if you could start by giving us a bit of an introduction to yourself and RA Medical. Talk us through your background.
Okay, personally, my background is in nursing, particularly surgical. But then I got married to Chris in 1976, and fairly quickly we had 4 sons. So I I took time off from that to bring them up. But I always had external interests in sort of like charitable community church activities. So I was always a very busy person. And then our 4 sons all went to boarding school, and basically I was bored. And then I looked for another activity. On hobby side, I'm a needlewoman. I like doing gold work and silk shading and things like that. And I love books and music and occasional trips to the theatre. I'm quite traditional in that respect. So in early '94, February to be precise, my husband Chris came home and said, "Darling, I've had an idea." So he'd worked at Cyprane, which was the original factory who developed and manufactured the Quantiflex range of flow meters, including the still very popular MDM. And over the years, Cyprane had been taken over by various companies, as happens, I'm afraid. And in the early 90s, they started making the staff redundant in sort of like little waves. And he could see the writing on the wall. I mean, the factory eventually closed in '95, so we did the right thing. And a lot of his knowledge was centered around the Quantiflex range of equipment because he'd been very involved with that, including working with Fraser Sweatman, who was the Canadian who was very instrumental in developing it. So his knowledge was second to none, really. And his vision was to establish a company that would support existing units out in the field, because support for them had become very fragmented. So we thought we'd offer a practical maintenance opportunity for existing dental users. So literally in February '94, I started the company by opening a bank account, and sitting down at my old portable typewriter at the kitchen table to write to prospective customers. And it just worked, it blossomed. So a year later, around April '95, we moved into a business unit and sort of haven't looked back from there, really. So as they say, the rest is history. So over the years, we now have become the premium supplier to the UK and Ireland for sedation equipment. See, that's another thing that came in after the Poswiller report and around the conscious decision is the issue of scavenging of nitrous oxide.
Right.
We introduced the first proper scavenger breathing system into the UK in '96. And now that's the most commonly used type of breathing system across the UK and Ireland.
Wow.
And we developed the Mini-Scav because there was a huge gap in the marketplace for a little standalone pump to give a sustained draw on the breathing system in compliance with COSH. You see, a staff can't be exposed to more than 100 parts per million over an 8-hour period of nitrous oxide. That's quite vital. So that, we are indeed the Mini-Scav and sort of launched it, and it's proved incredibly popular. So we're very good at sort of looking at gaps in the marketplace and trying to source product or develop product to deal with it. And we've got a really loyal staff. Some have been with us for many years. In fact, my office manager will celebrate 30 years next year. And therefore, keeping our staff, we retain all that expertise and product knowledge that they've gained over a period of time.
So it has a real family feel. Obviously, it was started as a family business, and kind of even everybody that's joined kind of stick with you and all stick together?
Absolutely, yes. We do operate very much as a team, and there is a real family feel to it.
That's fantastic. So something that starts with your husband coming home with those dangerous words, "I've had an idea," and here you are 30 years later.
Absolutely. It's a miracle.
How has your day-to-day kind of changed in that 30 years, sort of from when you were at the typewriter on your table to now?
That's a difficult one to answer. I mean, I like to actually think of myself as the grease which keeps the wheels running. So I'm always there for my staff, but obviously it's impossible nowadays to keep involved in absolutely everything that's going on. So I have to leave them to do it. Obviously, I'm very approachable if anybody needs any help and advice. It's difficult. Everyone has their own little area of expertise. I have an office manager, I have a service scheduler, I have a credit controller, and then there's all the engineering team, both in-house and people who go out and about. And it's just no day is ever the same. You just never quite know when you come into the office first thing, 9 o'clock, you don't know what's going to happen. You may get an absolute flood of phone calls, people asking for new equipment, people asking for help and advice, all sorts of things like that. Or it might be a very quiet day. The phone ringing doesn't signify how busy we are, because a big change nowadays, an awful lot of work is done by emails.
No, absolutely. I mean, I suppose that's probably the biggest change over the course of 30 years. I guess it was probably during the sort of 2000s that emails really kind of started to dominate.
Yes, obviously when we first started, an awful lot of work was done by letter. But then, yes, the internet started to really take off in the late 90s. And nowadays, we get very little in the way of traditional post. All the work is done by email.
No, it's the same here. So yeah, that's the way the world's changed. I mean, in terms of the obviously sort of talk about how kind of things have changed kind of in your working life over the course of 30 years. What have you kind of witnessed in terms of changes across the dental sector and the dentistry as a whole?
I mean, some of them have been quite monumental. I would say the first real change started with Poswillow report in the 1990. And that had a really significant effect, mainly around inhalation sedation. And it had a bit of a detrimental knock-on effect. And a lot of dentists thought, oh, I can't be doing with this, and basically disconnected their RA machines and hid them away in a cupboard for quite a number of years. And it was only when the dust settled that people would ring us up and say, well, we've got a machine, it's been in a cupboard for a few years, can you do anything with it? And of course, basically, yes, we went in and we recommissioned it. I think the second and most major change came in 2000 with publication of a conscious decision. And this basically prevented dentists doing GA procedures in a normal dental setting. And that was as a result of a few dental deaths, unfortunately. All of those deaths were associated with use of inappropriate sedation equipment. So they were using, in one case, it was a veterinary machine which had no hypoxic guard, and the patient died. So this really did raise the bar on the use of sedation equipment, and named only dedicated purpose-designed sedation machines to be used, which is what they should have been using in the first place. But hey, I mean, we've seen lots of other changes, both major and minor, and I'm very much of opinion that most of them were necessary, but some seem rather excessive. I mean, we deal with other suppliers and distributors across Europe, and there is a general feeling that UK has always been somewhat over-regulated. And of course, that's not going to change with the new compliance and regulatory requirements coming in, like UKCA and all the rest of it. So it's not getting any easier. It's getting more difficult, certainly. And we invest quite a lot of time and money and effort into making sure the company is as compliant as possible. Prior to 2000, they used to do quite a number of GAs in dental surgeries, which in some respects was quite a scary thing. But obviously from 2000 that was banned. So now you've got, it's conscious sedation. So conscious sedation covers IV, which is intravenous, which we don't do, RA or inhalation sedation, which is gaseous sedation, where you titrate oxygen nitrous oxide to precise doses, but with a very strong safety factor, because you've always got a baseline of oxygen and a maximum of 70% nitrous oxide, which is below the GA plane of anesthesia. And then you've got oral sedation, which is in some people can be a very, very uncertain thing. So again, as I say, it is quite tightly controlled. So basically, you're only supposed to offer inhalation sedation. Well, no, okay, you can't offer inhalation, you can't offer IV sedation to children younger than 12, or you're not supposed to. These are the rules. You can offer inhalation sedation to anyone who's suitable. And again, oral, it depends a little bit on the ASA factor and all that sort of thing of you know, how fit or unfit somebody is. So there are a variety of things there. And because the availability of dental GAs in hospitals has, well, it's just gone down dramatically since COVID, certainly, and the waiting lists are distressingly long. I heard the other day of someone who said, with the waiting list they've got, it could take up to 9 years to treat everybody. Yeah. The average waiting list for things like treatments in community dental is something like 2 or 3 years.
Really?
It's just absolutely unbelievable. And I think that's why a lot of people now are looking at putting gaseous sedation in, because once you've got over the initial cost of the installation, it's a relatively cost-effective method of treating your patients. So you can do all sorts under gaseous sedation. You can take teeth out, you can fill teeth, you can deal with nervous patients, you can deal with patients who have extreme gag factors. There's all sorts of interesting options there. And I think there's possibly quite a number of contracts out for grabs for what we tend to term the high street. So obviously you've got the hospitals, so that's acute and teaching. You've got community dental, and then you've got the high street. And the high street is a mixture of NHS, private, corporates, that sort of thing.
I mean, you say we're kind of. Do you feel we are sort of over compliant then in this country? There's too many regulations. How so?
Yeah, that's been the general feeling. Some of it is necessary, because you do need to give parameters for people to operate to. But when you compare us with Europe, it does feel like we are very constrained at times.
So, I mean, is there kind of a specific example that you can think of, or yeah, just kind of wondering in what ways?
Oh, well, well, yes, I could possibly. So, the latest NHS guidelines for sedation say that you must start the sedation procedure with an in-use cylinder and a full reserve cylinder. That is usually applied to what we call standalone machines, whereas in Europe they don't bother with any of that. They just have one cylinder of oxygen, one cylinder of nitrous oxide, and if it runs out, then see what happens. But I can say that here in the UK we have a very, very robust and excellent safety record. There have been no recorded incidents of morbidity when using a purpose-designed sedation machine. Long may that continue.
Absolutely. I'm sure everyone kind of listening and watching will be, kind of happy to hear that. Fantastic. So I wanted to ask as well, I mean, as you, kind of reached 3 decades this month as we record this, but what was RA Medical? What have you kind of been working on lately? What are you currently offering?
Oh, that's a good thing. I mean, obviously we do very much operate to the like family values. So we are 3rd generation. My father-in-law Thomas was works manager at Cyprane, which is how a young Chris became involved. And we now have our 4 sons in the business. So hopefully that will take us through, and who knows, some of my 5 grandchildren may continue the business. That's in the future. We are concentrating very much on ensuring that, the products we offer for sedation are absolutely spot on for what the customer requires. That's not the easiest thing, although the most popular machine is still the Quantiflex MDM, although the Quantiflex title was dropped a while ago, but people still use it. And that's our bestseller. Obviously, we offer a variety of digital machines, and we're always looking for new products, but we make sure that through quite robust testing, they are right for the marketplace. We don't just take anything on. Training is a vital factor. Basically, I think the future of the company is education and training, along with hopefully identifying any suitable new product that might come along. Maintenance is always an ongoing thing, and we are currently in the process of interviewing to boost our engineering team, because it is vital that we go on the customer's own site. You cannot do these things remotely. You've got to be there. The engineers have to see the holistic view of the equipment, and of course they're always there if the staff say, oh, can I just ask you about this, that and the other. And that is a very vital part of the way we operate, and always has been.
Fantastic. So you kind of obviously you have the family business, the family feel in the office, but also you're providing that kind of obviously personal touch, I guess, partly out of necessity, but obviously very important to your customers as well. For everybody, all dental professionals listening and watching, where can they find you?
Oh, we're online at ramedical.com, easy to find. Our phone number is there, or email janet@ramedical.com. I'm always happy to answer any questions or queries or anything. Believe me, no question is too odd. I've heard it all before.
Brilliant. Well, we'll include some of those details in the episode description as well, so anybody kind of listening now can find those below. But hey, thank you very much, Janet. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you.
You're very welcome, James. Thank you.